What if I told you that every conversation you have, every relationship you build, and every decision you make is already being influenced by invisible psychological forces? You believe you think independently, yet your mind dances to strings pulled by masters of influence who understand what you do not. Today, we shall unveil the dangerous secret that separates the rulers from the ruled, the art of psychological control that Machiavelli whispered about in the shadows of Renaissance Florence. By the end of this discourse, you will possess knowledge so potent that it will forever change how you perceive power, manipulation, and the theater of human interaction. When you understand that the mind is the true battlefield, you begin to see the world differently. You stop fighting people's actions and start influencing the very thoughts that create them. Every empire that has ever stood strong, every ruler who has ever commanded loyalty, began not by conquering land, but by conquering perception. The body may obey through fear, but the mind obeys through belief, and belief, once planted, grows stronger than chains or swords. Imagine this: a man who has no weapons, no army, yet commands the loyalty of thousands. How does he do it? By entering their minds quietly, without resistance. He learns what they desire most, what they fear most, what they dream of. Then, he wraps his influence around those emotions until they see him not as a threat, but as a necessity. That is the essence of psychological control: to make people depend on you without realizing they do. You must understand that the human mind is a landscape filled with emotion, ego, and imagination. Most men live trapped inside their own illusions, and they will defend those illusions even when they destroy them. If you can navigate those illusions, if you can make people see what you want them to see, you will never need to force them. They will follow willingly. This is why I always said that appearance is more powerful than reality, because people do not follow truth, they follow perception. They do not love what is real, they love what feels real. And if you can shape what feels real to them, you hold them in your hand without ever raising it. The mind, my friend, is not a fortress to be attacked. It is a maze to be explored. Every mind has its gates and guards. Some are protected by pride, others by fear, others by the need for validation. The skilled manipulator never knocks those gates down. He simply walks through them by speaking the right words, wearing the right mask, or creating the right silence. Every reaction, every emotion, every thought can be directed once you understand its source. This is the true art of control, not in commanding others, but in suggesting so powerfully that they command themselves. When you can implant an idea that feels like their own, when you can make them believe that obeying you was their own decision, you achieve what kings and tyrants could never do by force. You have conquered without declaring war. Think of how religion, politics, and authority work, not through constant battle, but through constant influence. The leaders of men do not fight their people, they guide their perception. They teach them what to fear, what to love, and what to admire. They shape their enemies, their idols, their ideals. And once the mind accepts that image, reality follows. People will sacrifice comfort, wealth, even life, for the illusions they've been taught to believe. But here lies the danger. The same mind that can be controlled can also be corrupted. When you learn to control perception, you must not forget that others are trying to control yours. Every flattery, every insult, every rumor, every opinion is a weapon aimed at your perception of yourself. Most people lose their power not because they are weak, but because they are emotionally reactive. They let others decide what they feel, and when you let someone control your emotions, you give them control of your actions. The wise ruler, therefore, trains his mind to be unshaken. He studies not only others but himself. He learns his triggers, his insecurities, his desires. He turns his own weaknesses into armor, because the man who knows his own mind cannot be ruled. He becomes the commander of every situation, not by shouting commands, but by understanding the psychology of everyone around him. The mind is where all power begins. Not in the sword, not in the throne, not in wealth. Influence is born in thought. If you win the war of perception, everything else will follow. Every gesture you make, every silence you choose, every emotion you display becomes a calculated weapon. You are no longer reacting to the world is reacting to you. This is why psychological control is not about aggression, it's about awareness. You do not conquer the world by striking it. You conquer it by understanding how it thinks. That is why I say the battlefield is not out there, but inside every person you meet. If you can control how people interpret your actions, you control their response. If you can make them believe your intentions are noble when they are strategic, you gain both their trust and their obedience. To control minds is to rule invisibly, without resistance, because what people see is never what truly is. It is what they have been led to believe, and the one who shapes that belief shapes destiny. Every man believes he is guided by logic, that his choices are born from reason and reflection. But this is an illusion. The truth is that reason is a frail servant, easily overpowered by emotion. Emotion is the true ruler of mankind. It is the silent current that directs the mind while convincing it that it moves freely. And if you wish to control others, you must learn to speak the language of emotion, not logic. You see, logic convinces the mind, but emotion commands the heart. And once the heart decides, the mind will twist reality to justify it. This is why men will fight wars for ideals they do not understand, follow leaders who deceive them, and love those who destroy them. They are not responding to truth. They are responding to feeling. Whoever controls feeling, therefore, controls behavior. In my time, I watched princes rise and fall not because of their strength, but because of their ability to move the hearts of their people. A cold ruler who fails to inspire emotion is hated. A cunning ruler who understands emotion is obeyed. If you can make people feel admiration, fear, gratitude, or even guilt, you can make them do almost anything. People crave emotion more than they crave truth. They long to feel important, seen, understood. Give them that illusion, and they will fight for you as if for their own life. The power lies in knowing which emotion to awaken and when. Fear is the most primal. It sharpens attention, kills hesitation, and drives obedience. A leader who can instill fear appears powerful, even if he is weak. But fear alone is unstable. It breeds hatred if not balanced with relief. That is why the art of psychological control lies in alternating fear with comfort, tension with peace. Create the storm, then become the shelter. Let them associate you with safety, and they will cling to you even when you are the one who created their terror. Look around, and you will see this tactic everywhere. In politics, religion, leadership, a problem is created, fear spreads, then the one who caused it offers the solution. The people, desperate for relief, hand over their freedom in gratitude. This is the pattern that has controlled humanity for centuries. It is not new. It is simply hidden behind different masks. The faces change, but the mechanism remains the same. Emotion is not just about grand gestures. It hides in small moments too, in tone, in silence, in eye contact. The one who knows how to use emotion becomes magnetic. People cannot resist someone who makes them feel. Whether it is admiration, fear, or even mystery, emotion hooks the mind deeper than reason ever could. When people feel strongly about you, they stop analyzing you. They stop questioning you. Their emotions become your shield. But there is another layer to this: the understanding that emotion blinds judgment. When you provoke strong feelings in someone, they lose the ability to see clearly. A person who feels deeply, whether love or hate, no longer perceives truth. They perceive what aligns with their emotion. That is why the manipulator never argues logic. He provokes emotion, watches it cloud reason, and lets the victim destroy themselves with their own feelings. The master of psychological control can move between emotions like a painter with his colors. He knows when to show warmth, when to appear cold, when to be distant, and when to show empathy. Each emotional shift alters the other person's perception. People begin to wonder what you think, how you feel, what your next move will be. Curiosity is an emotion too, and one of the most powerful. Once someone starts thinking about you, analyzing your silence, questioning your intentions, they are already under your influence. This is why rulers throughout history have surrounded themselves with mystery and grandeur. They evoke awe, an emotion that contains both fear and admiration. The people do not understand them fully, and that uncertainty becomes power. Emotion thrives in uncertainty. When people can't predict you, they fill in the gaps with imagination, and imagination amplifies emotion far beyond reality. You must never underestimate how fragile reason becomes in the presence of feeling. Even the wisest minds bend under emotional pressure. A ruler can lose control of a nation with one act of uncontrolled anger. A lover can destroy trust with one moment of insecurity. A manipulator can seize advantage with one well-timed smile. Emotion is the pulse that drives every decision, and whoever feels least controls most. So learn to observe emotion in others like a physician studies a disease. See where it begins, how it spreads, how it consumes judgment. Every person has an emotional pattern, a rhythm of reactions. Once you understand that rhythm, you can play it like an instrument. The melody of control is played not with words, but with feelings, and the one who conducts it commands the entire symphony. There is no greater trick in the art of control than making a man believe he is free while he walks exactly where you want him to go. This is the essence of psychological power, to design the illusion of choice so perfectly that your influence becomes invisible. People hate to be commanded, yet they love to decide. So the wise manipulator never gives orders, he gives options. He never forces, he guides. And in this subtle guidance lies total control. Human beings are slaves to their pride. They will reject truth if it feels imposed upon them, but embrace lies if they believe they chose them. To control someone's mind, you must not remove their freedom. You must redirect it. Offer them a path, then make every turn lead back to you. Let them think they chose it, and they will defend you as if defending their own will. That is the secret behind every ruler, every tyrant, every influencer who ruled without chains. The illusion of choice is more powerful than command because it recruits the ego as an ally. When a man obeys you unwillingly, he resists internally, but when he believes his obedience is self-chosen, his resistance dies. He not only follows, he justifies following. He becomes his own warden, policing his thoughts to protect the illusion that he is free. This is how entire nations are controlled without ever realizing it. People are given choices, but only between outcomes that serve the same master. Observe how this works in politics. You are given two candidates, two ideologies, two colors to choose from. But both serve the same structure, the same elite, the same invisible power. The people feel empowered because they voted, yet the throne never changes hands. That is the perfection of manipulation, when your victims not only accept their servitude but defend it. This is the art of invisible control, the masterpiece of perception management. In daily life, the same principle applies. A skilled leader or manipulator frames every situation in such a way that others willingly choose what benefits him. He does not say, "Do this." He says, "Would you prefer this or that?" And both paths lead exactly where he wants them to. He becomes the architect of outcomes, while others remain blind to the structure he has built. The more choices you offer within boundaries, the less people realize they are trapped. Freedom, you see, is not measured by options, but by who sets them. A ruler who understands this never fights for obedience, he designs it. He knows that people crave autonomy, so he lets them feel it. He disguises control as cooperation, command as participation. When you make people feel involved, They will commit more deeply to your goals than if you had forced them. They will invest their time, their emotion, even their identity, because they believe it is theirs. This is the beauty of psychological control, when the prisoner builds his own cell and calls it home. But the illusion of choice does not only apply to others. It is also the snare that captures you if you are unaware. Every day, the world presents you with choices that seem free but are carefully crafted. The media, the systems of belief, the rules of society, they shape your desires, your fears, your sense of right and wrong. You are made to believe you are choosing, when in truth, your range of thought was decided long before you began to think. This is how invisible power operates, by shaping the boundaries of what you believe is possible. If you want to master control, you must see beyond the surface of choice. Ask yourself, who benefits from my options? Who defined what is acceptable and what is forbidden? Who profits from my reaction? Every manipulator hides behind the illusion of generosity, of freedom, of care. They will tell you that you can do whatever you wish, as long as what you wish aligns with their design. True control never appears as control. It wears the mask of freedom. The manipulator's greatest weapon is not authority but subtlety. He never restricts movement, he redirects it. He never silences rebellion, he gives it a stage, a leader, a symbol, and quietly funds both sides. He lets the world burn itself out inside the boundaries he created. That is how empires survive revolutions. The people think they have won, but all they have done is step into a new version of the same cage. To control others through choice is to understand that freedom, for most, is psychological, not real. The moment you learn to shape perception, you no longer need to limit anyone physically. You simply design their reality. You choose the questions they are allowed to ask, the heroes they are allowed to admire, the fears they are taught to feel. And then, you let them decide within those walls, proudly, passionately, foolishly, while you stand outside, watching them dance in a prison built by their own consent. In every court, in every circle of influence, there are two kinds of men: those who speak to be heard, and those who stay silent to be remembered. The difference between them defines who rules and who serves. The art of psychological control is not in saying more, but in saying less. Words, when used carelessly, lose their value. But silence creates weight. Silence breeds curiosity. It gives birth to fear, respect, and fascination all at once. And in the minds of men, what they cannot understand, they begin to overestimate. The human mind is naturally drawn to scarcity. What is rare becomes precious. What is difficult to reach becomes desirable. And the one who makes himself scarce, in presence, in speech, in reaction, becomes powerful. The more available you are, the less they value you. The more predictable your voice, the more easily it's ignored. But when you step back, when you become deliberate, controlled, measured, every word you finally speak strikes like a blade. This is the rule of scarcity and silence, a law that governs not just wealth, but influence. When you make something rare, you give it meaning. When you make yourself rare, you create authority. Consider the way kings once ruled. They were not seen often. They did not mingle with the crowd. Their distance created awe. Their silence created myth. The people spoke their names with reverence because they were unseen. Invisibility became the symbol of superiority. Modern rulers, too, follow the same rule, though their crowns are invisible. The successful, the powerful, the influential. They guard their access like gold. They do not share every thought. They do not reveal every emotion. They do not chase attention. They make attention chase them. And every time they do appear, every time they speak, the world listens. Because silence has made their words expensive. Silence does not only protect you, it amplifies your image. When you do not reveal everything, people begin to create stories about you. They wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're capable of. And in their imagination, They create versions of you far greater than reality. This is where the true psychological power lies, in making people think more of you than you are willing to show. To master silence, however, you must first conquer your own insecurity. The weak man fears silence because he confuses it with invisibility. He believes that to stay quiet is to be forgotten. But this is foolishness. The strong man knows that silence is not emptiness. It is dominance restrained. It is saying, I could speak, but I choose not to. And that choice forces others to fill the space you leave behind with their own speculation. This is how you make your silence louder than another man's voice. In conversation, the one who listens learns. The one who speaks reveals. If you let others fill the air, they expose their weaknesses, their fears, their ambitions. Meanwhile, you remain still, studying, calculating, understanding. When the moment is right, a single sentence from you will carry more weight than all their noise combined. Scarcity extends beyond speech. It applies to your energy, your attention, your availability. The one who gives too freely, who is always there, who is easily reached, loses all mystique. People start to treat him like a constant background noise. But withdraw, limit access, make your presence felt only when necessary, and your very absence begins to speak for you. The moment you walk into a room, heads turn. The moment you speak, silence falls. Not because you demanded attention, but because you withheld it long enough for others to crave it. Even in power, silence becomes a form of warfare. When your enemies attack you with words, respond with none. They grow frustrated, confused, desperate for reaction. They start to expose their intentions while trying to provoke yours. Silence makes them lose their composure, and that is when you strike. Not with anger, but with precision. Every moment you resist the urge to react, you take another piece of control from them. Understand this. Power grows not through abundance, but through limitation. The sun shines every day, yet few notice it, but the eclipse which comes once in years stops the world in awe. Scarcity multiplies power. When you make your emotions rare, they become valuable. When you make your presence selective, it becomes sacred. And when your silence becomes your language, people will fear breaking it. There is an elegance in restraint that the undisciplined can never imitate. The more you say, the more you must defend. The more you reveal, the more you risk. But when you stay silent, no one knows your plan, your fear, or your weakness. They must guess, and guessing keeps them beneath you. The less they understand, the more they respect. That is how power sustains itself, not by constant display, but by careful concealment. Every master of influence learns this eventually. That to speak with impact, you must first learn to value silence. To be desired, you must become scarce. To be remembered, you must not be everywhere. When you combine silence with scarcity, you create an aura that commands attention without ever asking for it. People begin to feel your presence even when you are not there. Your absence becomes louder than their noise, and your quiet confidence becomes the most terrifying kind of control. Every man carries within him a weakness, a hidden crack in the armor of his pride. Some are slaves to flattery, others to fear, others to the desperate need to be seen, admired, or loved. The secret to controlling people lies not in confronting their strength, but in discovering their weakness, and mirroring it back to them so perfectly that they see themselves in you. This is not cruelty, it is precision. To rule minds, you must first understand the fragile nature of human vanity. You see, people do not follow the strongest. They follow those who reflect their desires, their values, their insecurities. They are drawn to the familiar, to the one who appears to understand them. The manipulator knows this well. He does not dominate through opposition. He seduces through reflection. He becomes a mirror, showing people not what they are, but what they want to see. He agrees subtly, sympathizes intelligently, and adapts quietly until trust is built, and once trust is built, influence follows effortlessly. Most men are too loud to notice what lies in front of them. They talk to be heard, but the powerful man listens to understand. He studies tone, pauses, facial expressions, the slight tremble in a voice when pride hides insecurity. He collects these details like weapons. For once you know a person's fear, you can shape their reality. Tell a proud man what he wants to hear, and he will open every door for you. Challenge him too early, and he will shut them all. The art is not in domination. It is in subtle alignment. There is no greater illusion of power than making someone believe you are on their side. When they feel understood, their guard falls. They stop seeing you as a rival and start seeing you as an ally. That is when they reveal everything, their ambitions, their jealousies, their frustrations. And once you hold that knowledge, you hold control. People cannot resist someone who reflects their emotional truth. They mistake understanding for loyalty, empathy for alliance, and that is how influence begins, with understanding, not demand. Flattery, when used without intelligence, is empty. But when used strategically, it is one of the deadliest tools of psychological control. The trick is not to flatter obviously, but to mirror subtly. When someone speaks, find what they pride themselves on and reflect it. Let them feel wise, special, chosen. Make them believe you see the greatness they want the world to recognize. They will seek your company again and again. Not knowing it is their ego, not affection. That binds them to you. But weakness is not always vanity. Sometimes it is fear. Fear of rejection, failure, insignificance. And fear, once discovered, can be shaped into obedience. A fearful person will obey anyone who promises safety. A proud person will follow anyone who promises recognition. The manipulator learns both. He becomes whatever the other person's weakness demands. For the frightened, he is protection. For the proud, he is praise. For the lonely, he is understanding. And the beauty of it all, they never realize it's a reflection, not reality. To mirror weakness is not only to gain power, it is to disarm resistance. People do not fight what feels familiar. When they sense that you get them, they stop doubting you. They begin to share secrets, reveal motives, and even defend your actions. You no longer need to persuade them. They persuade themselves. They begin to trust the image you've built, even if that image is only the echo of their own desires. I have seen men rise to greatness not through wisdom, but through the mastery of reflection. They made others feel important. They listened deeply, spoke sparingly, and revealed nothing of themselves. They wore the faces that others wanted to see, and behind those faces they shaped empires. This is why those who crave authenticity often fall first, because they underestimate how much people prefer illusion over truth. To mirror someone's weakness is to give them what they crave: emotional validation, and in return, they give you loyalty. However, there is a darker side to this art. The more you reflect others, the less of yourself you must show. To become the mirror, you must erase the reflection of your own weakness. You cannot be swayed by flattery or provoked by emotion. For the manipulator who feels too deeply loses his edge. The observer must remain detached, calm, and cold enough to see through the smoke of human emotion. Compassion is useful, but only when controlled. Too much empathy clouds judgment, too little breaks the illusion. You must balance both. Always one step behind sympathy and one step ahead of strategy. When you master this, your influence becomes quiet, almost invisible. You will find that people begin to open their hearts without realizing why. They will confess things no one else knows. They will rely on you for validation, direction, or comfort. And every time they look at you, they will see the reflection of their own desires. They will think they are drawn to your soul, but what they are drawn to is themselves. This is how you rule minds without ruling bodies. You don't impose your will, you weave it into theirs. You don't demand obedience, you inspire it. The mirror becomes the master, and the one being reflected becomes the slave. Because in the end, people never love you for who you are. They love you for what they see of themselves when they look at you. There is a level of control that transcends domination, persuasion, or manipulation. It is the quietest, most dangerous, and most elegant form of power. It is when you can guide a person to do exactly what you want, yet they believe it was their own decision. This, my friend, is the final layer of psychological control, the kind Machiavelli himself admired and warned about. The ruler who perfects this art does not need chains or threats, for his influence lives inside the mind of his subject. Think of it this way. The average man resists commands, but he welcomes his own choices. He despises being told what to do, but feels pride when he believes he has discovered the path himself. The wise manipulator knows this truth. Control disguised as freedom is the most irresistible form of dominance. When a person believes they are acting on their own will, they not only comply, they defend their decision, protect it, and become loyal to the one who planted it. To execute this level of control, you must master the subtle art of suggestion. You do not impose ideas, you plant them. You speak indirectly, leading minds toward conclusions without ever revealing the trail you have laid. You might say, "I wonder what would happen if someone took this approach." Or, "Perhaps you've already considered doing it this way." In that moment, the idea transfers ownership. It becomes theirs. The seed you planted grows under their care, watered by their ego. And when it bears fruit, they never suspect the gardener. Machiavelli understood that to truly dominate a person, you must never let them feel dominated. He wrote that men are easier to deceive than to compel, and far more comfortable believing they are acting freely. When a ruler demands obedience, he risks rebellion. But when he inspires voluntary submission disguised as personal choice, he becomes unchallengeable. People will destroy themselves defending what they believe is their own will, when in truth, it was shaped by another's design. You can see this in every corner of life. In politics, leaders frame manipulation as empowerment. They give people a sense of participation, while every decision has already been made. In relationships, one person guides the other's emotions, crafting a false sense of independence. In workplaces, masters of influence allow their subordinates to come up with ideas that were carefully suggested to them. The illusion of control is the most intoxicating drug for the human mind, and those who dispense it become gods in the eyes of mortals. But make no mistake, this form of power requires discipline. You must suppress your desire to claim credit, to show your influence, to reveal your control. Once your hand is seen, the illusion collapses. The people you control must never sense that you are the architect of their actions. To maintain power, you must remain invisible, like the wind that bends the trees yet is never seen. True mastery lies in restraint, in letting others take the glory for the plans you designed. The irony of this control is that it is rooted in human weakness, pride. Every person desires to feel intelligent, autonomous, and capable. And so, the manipulator feeds that pride like a flame, giving just enough oxygen for it to grow. "You were right all along," he says. "That was your idea, wasn't it?" The target swells with satisfaction, unaware that their very sense of victory is the leash around their neck. Over time, this invisible domination creates dependency. Because when a person believes their success stems from their own brilliance that was actually guided, they unknowingly bind themselves to the one who made them feel capable. They return for approval, for recognition, for that subtle guidance that makes them feel powerful. This is how control evolves into loyalty, and loyalty, once deeply rooted, becomes submission without resistance. In this final layer of psychological control, power ceases to look like power. It becomes calm, persuasive, invisible, like a shadow that moves with you, influencing without force. And the world mistakes your manipulation for wisdom, your control for inspiration, and your design for destiny. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he understood one great truth. that the mind is the easiest kingdom to conquer and the hardest to free. To rule hearts through fear is effective, but to rule minds through illusion is eternal. Once people believe that their chains are their choices, there is no need for a cage. They will guard their own prison, and they will call it freedom. Conclusion: the dangerous secret of psychological control. In the end, what Machiavelli revealed, and what few dare to accept, is that control is not about visible power. It is not about titles, crowns, or authority. It is about perception, the quiet shaping of how others think, act, and respond without ever realizing they are being guided. The dangerous secret of psychological control lies in subtlety, the ability to dominate without force, to influence without command, and to rule without being seen. Throughout history, the most powerful men did not shout their influence, they whispered it. They understood that fear creates obedience, but illusion creates devotion. A man forced into submission will one day rebel, but a man who believes he acts freely will defend his own servitude until the end. This is the secret Machiavelli left for those who truly seek mastery, not of others' bodies, but of their minds. To control people psychologically is to understand them more deeply than they understand themselves. Their pride, their insecurities, their desires for approval and recognition. And when you can navigate those hidden chambers of the human soul, you no longer need weapons or armies. Your weapon is suggestion, your army is perception. So remember this: the most dangerous form of power is not the one you can see, it is the one you cannot detect. The ruler who masters silence, illusion, and the art of unseen persuasion does not chase control, he becomes it. And by the time his influence is felt, it is already too late to resist. That is the Machiavellian truth. The real throne is not built of gold or marble, but in the invisible corridors of the human mind.